Picture this. Today is your birthday.
Happy birthday to you.
A textbook cause for a celebration to gather your friends and hang out, right? What would your plan look like? First, you'd probably create a group chat on WhatsApp to see what's up, pun not intended. You need to arrange everyone's schedule, organize, plan, etc. For a special occasion like this, you'll need a special place, the best place you can find. You open a Google map, browse menus and reviews on The Fork, and pick the most highly rated restaurant in the area. While you're planning, your friends are probably thinking what they can get you as a gift. Maybe order something from your favorite brand or buy some new electric gear on Amazon. And your best friend may even splurge on tickets on Skyscanner to a vacation spot you both wanted to go to. When everyone arrives, you have a great time together, chatting, laughing, and posting new group photos on Instagram. But as the evening winds down, it's time to wrap up. The waiter brings the bill, you pay by Apple or Google Pay, and then head out. Meanwhile, your friends pull out their phones to pay their share for dinner through their mobile banking apps. Whoops, you celebrated well into the night and no public transport is available. Nothing to worry about, everyone wishes you one last happy birthday and then takes an Uber to home. Unfortunately, in the morning, you're not feeling too well. You decide to stay in, spend the day resting and taking care of yourself. So you get a day off at work and order food delivery from DoorDash to your door. Now, picture this. What if you and your friends spent that entire long, eventful day without ever putting down the phone? Not even just the phone itself, just using one app. From setting up the group chat with your friends to booking that doctor's appointment, all in one place. Well, many people don't even have to imagine. For 6 out of 10 Chinese citizens, daily life, whether it's job hunting, staying in touch with family and friends, buying food and clothes, and so much more, revolves around one giant multifunctional service called WeChat. Sounds convenient, right? Instead of a dozen different apps, logins, passwords, and interfaces, there's one Superapp where you can handle practically any everyday task. It would be hard for giants like WhatsApp and Instagram to compete with everything WeChat has to offer. Luckily for them, they don't have to. WeChat holds a firm monopoly in a country with a population of 1.5 billion because everything is, well, banned. Now, would you be surprised if I tell you that behind the mask of super convenient one-size-fits-all app hides a population control tool, always ready to crush any dissent? Sounds scary, doesn't it? And what if I tell you Steve Jobs had a part to play in creating the China's Big Brother? If that sounds a little too crazy now, just keep watching. We'll tell you how the country's #1 app was built, who helped make it real, how to copy success, and whether it's really true that the best way to win the competition is to have no competition in the first place. But most importantly, it's a story about China and its censorship of its people, their conscience, their media, and their life. Stay with us. It's going to be interesting. Let's begin. But before we begin, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and have notifications turned on for our new videos. That way we won't lose touch. Enjoy watching. QQ. These two letters begin our story. In the late 1990s, a young Chinese IT specialist named Pony Ma noticed that a local telecom company had put out a bid to create a copy of the wildly popular American messaging app at the time, ICQ. But before we go any further, let's understand the cultural and technological context of that. This is the dawn of the internet. Before ICQ, that was developed by the Israeli company Mirabilis, the entire world could only send electronic messages via email. Suddenly you had this magic happening live on a computer and maybe even on a phone, a revolution in communication. Pony Ma quickly realized that this was the technology from the West his country was going to copy, and he had to be the first to do it. He quit his job, founded Tencent, and by February 1999 he released his first product, a Chinese copycat of ICQ. The clone was so similar to the original that they didn't even hide their roots in the brand's name. They called it simply Open ICQ. They later trimmed it down to just Q, well, twice the Q, just for good measure. But as you probably know, ICQ's global success, while bright, was very short-lived. The Chinese version, however, didn't go the same path. That's because Pony Ma didn't just blindly copy a Western product, he actually solved a fundamental problem. Otherwise, QQ would never find success on the Chinese market. Here's the thing, originally ICQ stored all its chats and your entire contact list directly on your device. In 1999, contacts finally became transferable, but your entire chat history was still tied to the .dat files on each specific machine. In the US, computers were already somewhat common by the late 90s. But then, in impoverished China, a home PC was as common as a unicorn. To access the web, people went to internet cafes. This meant every time they logged in their account, it was basically from a different device. Every time is like the first time, with all your friends and family. Can you imagine the hassle? Under these conditions, spreading ICQ or its clone was practically impossible. QQ made a smart move. It stored user data on its own servers. Simply copying ICQ without resolving this crucial user problem would never have won over the unique local market. It became an instant hit. In 2001, when China's QQ was just getting started, ICQ already had 100 million users worldwide. Just a year later, QQ's user base in China soared past 50 million. By 2004, its numbers matched ICQ's. What's important is that ICQ's 100 million represented total registered accounts, while QQ's figure was for active users, those who had logged in at least once in the past month. If you compare the same metrics, the numbers would look very different. In 2010, ICQ is still a promising asset. It was acquired by the Russian media giant Mail.ru. No surprises here. By then, its active user base had reached 42 million, and a third of that was in Russia. But within a few years, the market was flooded with new players, and the outdated ICQ simply couldn't keep up with the competition. Those 42 million active users dwindled to 16 million, and even in conservative-minded Russia, the service's popularity took a nosedive. Meanwhile, back in China, the homegrown ICQ was reporting an incredible 500 million active users by 2009. On paper, it was a runaway success. Shares of its parent company Tencent had tripled. Its market cap was in the tens of billions, and half of China's population was using QQ. But if Pony Ma had settled there, his app would likely have followed ICQ's fate. Because right around that time, a new competitor appeared on the horizon. Kik. Hold up, who? No ads, no games, no gimmicks. That slogan, scrawled on a piece of paper, hung on the office wall of Jan Koum, one of the co-founders of WhatsApp, a great guy who simply hated missing important calls. So in 2009, he created the first version of the Green app, except back then it wasn't a messaging app at all. It was an app for status updates, at the gym, battery dying, ready to chat. But one key feature added by Apple changed the whole game. The late 2000s was the era when Steve Jobs was presenting his
One more thing.
and text conversations happened via SMS. Maybe some of our viewers missed this period, but there was a time when you had to pay for every message you exchanged with your friends. Every text was precious, as a short chat could easily cost you a few dollars. And so, on June the 17th, 2009, a new feature appeared on iPhones: push notifications. Something so basic now, it fundamentally reprogrammed our habits. Now, any piece of information from any app instantly appeared on a user's screen with a short sound alert, including WhatsApp statuses from other users. People started using statuses to send short messages like, "On my way," or "Can't talk right now." It was a new way to chat, and the owner of WhatsApp caught on to this very quickly. Just 2 months later, Jan Koum released WhatsApp 2.0, the app that we know it as today. It had 2 new key features. You could make an account using your phone number instead of an email, and the second one, an actual direct message function. No more paying for SMS, chatting in WhatsApp fee was set at just $1 per year. The app's audience began to grow rapidly. By 2010, the number of active users reached 10 million. WhatsApp was gradually rolling out cross-platform functionality and positioning itself as an SMS replacement. But in October of that year, a Canadian startup launched its own communication app, Kik. Within just 18 days, its user base hit 1.5 million active users. Why the popularity? What features made it even better than WhatsApp? We have to remember that, at the time, WhatsApp had 10 million users worldwide, while the population of the US alone was 300 million, a huge field for competition. And who would have thought that if you took the already booming WhatsApp, made it faster, launched it on all platforms right from the get-go, and allowed users to easily import all their phone book contacts, basically violating modern personal data laws, you could achieve a massive viral effect? Alan Zhang, an employee at the now familiar Tencent, saw an emerging rival right away. Seeing the explosive success of Canada's Kik, he wrote an email to Pony Ma in the middle of the night. He said, "Kik is a threat to our business, and if we don't act, we'll lose everything." A reply soon came from Pony Ma. "Then act right now." And while Alan and the team were getting ready to take action, you can take a moment to like this video. We'll continue. The following week, several competing teams were assembled with one goal in mind: to create a Chinese version of Kik or WhatsApp in the shortest time possible. One of the teams was led by Alan Zhang himself. 10 people worked in a small, dark room in Guangzhou. Zhang's team won the race, and 2.5 months later, His Majesty WeChat was born. Here's what it looked like. Then WeChat, Kik, and WhatsApp were still hard to tell apart. You know, if you were to describe the whole evolution of texting, it would look kind of like this. First came SMS, where every message arrived separately, each on a new line, regardless of the sender. The revolution came from BlackBerry, yes, the now almost forgotten phone maker from the 2000s. Their BBM messenger was a huge step up. They introduced a slew of new things, all messages from one user fit in a single thread, where you could add contacts by PIN or email, functional multi-chats, message statuses for the first time, delivered, read, and even user is typing. BlackBerry basically made a full-fledged modern messaging app. Then comes WhatsApp 1.0, first only as a status app, then WhatsApp 2.0 as a messaging platform. A year later, the Canadians release Kik, and just 2.5 months after that, our main character appears, WeChat. Of course, these weren't the only ones at the time. Market was split, with niches filled by Ping Chat, MeTalk, TalkBox, and others. The creator of WeChat specifically mentioned them in his legendary email. In this letter, he said a new era in communication was coming and that all these messengers posed a great threat to the dominant QQ. And he was a visionary when it came to that. The thing is, after its launch, WeChat didn't find instant fame. At the starting line, it was being outperformed by Xiaomi's app, MeTalk. Launched a bit earlier, its audience and attention were growing fast. This was also a stage of fierce copycat competition in the Chinese market, with a bunch of other apps popping up: Feidu, Uni, Kuzin. There was a lot of doubt among team members during those months. Alan recalls the situation. At the beginning, everyone thought it was unlikely to succeed, and I also felt there was a high chance the project would fail. Only Zhao Long thought it had a chance, but I was willing to try. Failure wouldn't matter. I saw it more as an obligation to fend off Tencent's potential competitors. WeChat is a new product and a new experience for me, and it will also improve my technical skills. I won't hold back my energy just because there seems to be no hope. I will give it my all, and I'm willing to encourage my colleagues in the same way. Who would have thought that WeChat would be saved by adding voice messages? This wasn't just a fluke, but a true killer feature. Here's the thing, most languages use an alphabet for writing. A string of letters turn into a word. Chinese language doesn't have an alphabet, not even an unfamiliar one. They use characters, each carrying its own semantic meaning. For example, to write college, you need to find the characters for study and facility and put them next to each other. For computer, you combine electric and brain. There aren't 30 or 40 of these symbols, there are thousands. Mandarin keyboard would basically look something like this. People came up with several different ways to avoid that becoming a reality. If you go into keyboard settings for Chinese, even for simplified, there'd be a number of input methods. The most popular is pinyin. It's when you type the word using Latin letters and, based on context, the correct Chinese characters are suggested. In short, just to write in your own language, you need to know a lot of rules. Older generations especially struggled with these input methods. Chatting in messengers in early 2010s China was pure torture. For us, it might even seem superfluous. But there, TalkBox, a voice messaging app, emerged and quickly became the #1 social app in the region. Pony Ma and Alan Zhang were active TalkBox users themselves, and they personally felt how crucial voice messaging was in Asian communication culture. So the decision was made to copy, or rather simply integrate, this functionality into their product. This decision was a turning point. The downloads skyrocketed from a couple of thousand by 50,000–60,000 people daily. WeChat's future, once full of doubts, now shined with confidence of its bright prospects. On top of that, Tencent added an option to migrate contacts from QQ, their flagship app, to WeChat. They hedged a bet on their new creation. WeChat began to shift away from its initial minimalist kick-style prototype. The next feature they added was people nearby. Sounds kind of creepy, right? But in China, it caused a dating boom. Why? It's hard to say, but random encounters with neighbors were incredibly popular at the time. By adding this function, they also solved the problem of having an empty contact list. Even if you were a total hermit, you could find someone to chat with just by tapping to see who's around. This feature, by the way, was added at the same time as a release of a separate dating app called Momo. This only added to the trend for social interaction. Another interactive gimmick they introduced was Shake. How does it work? Well, you take your phone, shake it, and it suggests someone who is nearby and shook their phone at the same time as you. Now, maybe all this seems like trivial nonsense to you, but in the first month, this feature was used 100 million times. Alan Zhang said that WeChat rests on 3 pillars: voice messages, people nearby, and Shake. Integration of these 3 solutions made the user base absolutely massive. Here's the visualization of the popularity boom. 3 million active users after launch, next 3 months, 14 million, and after another 3 months, 50 million. A business can only dream of such numbers. In 1 year, WeChat went from being just another messaging app to potentially the next big thing. Then came the voice and video calls. Analogs of stories and reels appeared, along with a game center, an inbuilt money transfer system, advertising platform, QR, and business payments. All of this brought WeChat nearly 900 million active users by 2017. In March 2018, its number of active users finally exceeded 1 billion. Tencent entered the top 5 largest companies in the world with a market capitalization of $500 billion. Ahead were only Google, Apple, Microsoft, and Amazon. In other words, its main competitors. But does Tencent really need to compete with anyone? WeChat owes its success in becoming China's messaging app to government blocks. A popular thesis that is greatly exaggerated. A piece of history. On June the 26th, 2009, at 2 o'clock in the morning, a brawl broke out between two ethnic groups, the minority Muslim Uyghurs and the Han Chinese, at a toy factory in one of China's provinces. For 2 hours, the Han beat the Uyghurs and the Uyghurs beat the Han. 100 people got injured and 2 Uyghurs were killed as a result. A few days later, demonstrations began demanding an investigation into their deaths. Peaceful protests slowly turned into mass riots involving thousands of people. Protesters threw stones, smashed cars, and broke into shops. Police resorted to tear gas, usage of blunt force, and mass arrests. The riot had a huge toll: 1,721 injured, 197 dead, more than 400 accused, and 26 death sentences. A very serious incident. On July the 7th, regional authorities claimed that the riots had been instigated from abroad and that they had evidence, recorded conversations on their hands. And since the riots had been organized via the web, the internet had to be blocked in the entire region. Almost makes sense, right? In a complete coincidence along the internet access, Facebook was also blocked throughout China on the same day. Despite the fact that it was not among the listed channels for coordinating protests, the excuse was too convenient. Fact is, 2009 marked China's large-scale trend of blocking Western applications. On March the 25th, now YouTube went under because of a video allegedly showing Chinese security forces beating detainees at an anti-Tibet rally. The authorities claimed that it was a fabrication. It is now impossible to verify the video, but the fact is that it alone, one video, served as a pretense to block the entire service. Then, on June the 2nd, Twitter was blocked. This was 2 days before the 20th anniversary of the bloody events in Tiananmen Square. A month later, Facebook was also shut down. It's true that these bans did indeed cut Chinese citizens off from Western services, but they also sparked a competition between local players, both existing and new, who wanted to make it big onto a now open field. But the hero of our story didn't even get to reap the benefits of protectionism until 2014, when Instagram was blocked amid protests in Hong Kong. Even that only slightly helped WeChat, as it was only competing with Instagram Reels with its WeChat Moments. At the time of Instagram's blocking, WeChat already dominated the local market and had 438 million active users. WeChat's direct competitors did not last too long in China either. Telegram was blocked there almost immediately, a couple of years after its creation, and its main competitor, WhatsApp, was only blocked in 2017, when the number of active WeChat users approached 1 billion. And it is then when WeChat won over all of its competitors and became a powerhouse, handling everything from text and video to payments and business chats. The government decided to take matters into their own hands. By the way, you can check out our Patreon where you can always support the release of our new videos. Thank you. July 4th. A student, a democratic movement. Send them separately in WeChat and it will get through. But type something along the lines of the Student Democratic Movement of June the 4th or my birthday is June the 4th, I am a student, I am reading a book about democratic movements. These messages simply won't reach the recipient. The sender would think that the message has been sent, but the recipient wouldn't even know that they had been written to. This experiment was conducted in 2016 by researchers at the University of Toronto's Citizen Lab. Why? It's simple. They were studying censorship on WeChat. What could be so serious about this message? You probably know the answer. June the 4th, 1989 is the date of the brutal suppression of student unrest in Tiananmen Square, during which thousands of protesters were killed. The Chinese authorities are trying to carefully erase this page of history from public memory. On June the 4th, 1989, at Tiananmen Square, there was nothing. That is China's official position. As you can see, when certain words are put together, they form a meaning that refers to a specific event. Individually, the words pass the platform's filter. The events at Tiananmen are far from the only thing that WeChat blocks without users noticing. In the same study, Citizen Lab found 174 keywords, more than half of which relate to protests, 18% to criticism of the party, 6% to banned books and media, and another 6% to Xinjiang and Tibet. To circumvent shadow censorship, users came up with their own newspeak. For example, June the 4th becomes May the 35th or April the 65th. The Chinese Communist Party's propaganda department, following in Orwell's footsteps, is called the Ministry of Truth. Somehow on WeChat, Vietnamese pho noodles are discussed more often than anywhere else in the world. Any guesses why? Quick hint: first letters. The check is done directly on Tencent's servers. In other words, it is not even the state doing the censorship, but the company itself. Since 2011, its structure includes a Communist Party cell, which not only controls what is allowed, but also has the right to participate in the management of the company. Actually, calling it a cell is an understatement. It's an entire goddamn committee. It's not just loyalty to the cause. Monitoring correspondence and publications is a requirement of Chinese law, and these requirements are not limited to simply deleting content and shadow-blocking sent messages. Everything you write, even in a private chat, can and will be used against you in a court of law. For example, one WeChat user ended up behind bars for 10 months under the crime of inciting quarrels and provoking unrest. He sent his friend in the US a video about the Act Together democratic movement. And in another case, a 19-year-old Uyghur student was sentenced under an extremism law for posting footage of anti-COVID protests. Messages leading to criminal charges aren't restricted to political activists. In 2016, one user was sentenced to 2 years in prison for sharing messages about Islamic ceremonies and quotes from the Quran. Another user received a far more lenient punishment, just 5 days of administrative detention for mocking a police sobriety checkpoint in a 240-person group chat. The police considered this undesirable social influence. What's surprising is that he even was released after an appeal. To be frank, in a population of 1.5 billion people, these cases are a drop in the ocean. Over the past 5 years, only 468 people have been detained, not necessarily imprisoned, for their correspondence on WeChat. On the other hand, the total monitoring of messages is a tool that can be used in different ways. If necessary, the authorities can ramp up efforts in this direction and conduct arrests more actively. And that's exactly what happens. Over a 5-year period, these arrests are not evenly distributed. A third of them occurred in just 5 months during 2019. The majority of reasons for arrests were found in group chats and local short video features. The 3 most common causes were spreading rumors, criticizing the government, and making personal insults. Not everything that falls under rumors offends officials and the police. For example, a person might have exaggerated the official death toll from an explosion. This kind of disinformation should not be spread. There was one particularly cautionary tale that's hard not to mention. A doctor by the name Wenliang Li was summoned in for questioning by the police. They believed he had spread dangerous false rumors on WeChat. Li himself got off easy. He was forced to sign a statement refuting his words and was released. This happened in 2019 in the city of Wuhan. The rumors he spread concerned the emergence of a new respiratory infection, which was later given this name. We know it commonly as COVID-19. Over the next 2 years, it will claim the lives of millions of people around the world. WeChat is not just a multifunctional super app. It's a multifunctional communication filter and an electronic big brother, monitoring every word and every post made by every citizen. Convenient for both citizens and the state. These are the 2 sides of the National Messenger's golden medal. It's easy to see how Chinese experience is so tempting for governing bodies, even the most democratic ones. A perfect tool for monitoring their own populations. It's quite possible that deep in their dark bureaucratic hearts, the Leviathan of the state dreams of creating its own WeChat in Britain, France, even in the United States. We already know how Britain passed the Online Safety Act and began actively regulating the internet. We'll have an episode on that soon, by the way, so don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell. Russia is another country that has been directly borrowing from the big Eastern Brother playbook for a while now. The government there created a state-sanctioned national messenger, legally and technologically blocked competitors, and now pushing people to install it. The population, by the way, is putting up a lot of resistance. We live in a remarkable time. Over the last 30 years, we've created screens that now shape human consciousness. Beliefs are formed through memes. Values are shaped by Instagram algorithms. And daily life is dictated by a YouTube feed. Look, I understand the desire to control how people's thoughts are shaped. In the abstract, I even support the idea. But as with any issue of control, society must find that line between protecting people from the harmful influences of social media and defending freedom of speech. And every society will have to find their own way of dealing with that. China lets the market take its course first, only then to hijack the best product with the party apparatniks. Russia's approach, in contrast, is blunt and direct. It simply bans all non-compliant platforms and forces users to switch to apps created by state-aligned companies. The quality control of an end product is an afterthought. Western countries, however, have the leverage to compel international corporations to adjust their algorithms. In the end, all of us are going to use our own versions of WeChat. What's at stake is how much censorship and state control yours is going to have. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and send this video to your friends. See you in the next episode. And I'm TheResearcher.